Okay, so the next topic that we're going to discuss is called a cross tabulation or a crosstab. Excel calls these pivot tables. These are perhaps one of the most powerful ways to quickly examine relationships among different variables. So the stuff I'll demonstrate today is very basic. You should explore this much more on your own, and there's lots of other YouTube videos out there from other people that talk about how to use pivot tables efficiently and using slicers and stuff like that, which I'm not going to get to. But let's take a look at it. So we're going to go back to the restaurant data that we had used last time for histograms and box plots, and take a look at trying to create a pivot table, cross tabulation, and then on top of a pivot table we often put a pivot chart, and in this case here we're going to break the restaurants out by quality rating, good, very good, and excellent, and then also look at the break them into buckets of $10 increments for meal price and see what percentage of overall the restaurants fall into which one of those buckets. So this is one way to kind of look at the distribution as it breaks out across all three different types of quality ratings. So I'm going to go back to Blackboard, and under Materials, Unit 2, down here I'm going to grab the last Excel that we used and open it up and use that to create the pivot table. So here's what we did last time, right? We did histograms and box plots, and so now we're going to use the same data. And I go up here and I'm going to click in cell A1 just for fun, and then go to Insert. Up in the far left hand corner is Pivot Table, easily arrange and summarize complex data. That's just what we're trying to do. So I'm going to click on that. Excel is usually smart enough to look at what data you want. In this case we have it set up pretty easily and pretty tidy. So it says yes, do you want everything from A1 to D103? I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to put it in a new worksheet because this other first worksheet was getting kind of cluttered. Click OK, and then we have something that looks like this. The pivot table fields are up here, and then down here we have it broken into 4 different areas. Filters, which we're not going to use immediately right now. You can, but sometimes they're useful. Columns, that's what we want across the column headings. Rows, what we want in each row, and then values is what we're trying to kind of tabulate across the columns and the rows. That's why it's called a cross tabulation. So it looked like we were interested in the number of restaurants. So that restaurant I can click and drag down into values, and notice that when I do that, sum of restaurant comes out to be 45150. So what is it doing? Well, if I go back over here and look at it, it's adding up all of the numbers in the column restaurant, which is just a counter from 1 to 300. So if you want to know the sum from 1 to 300, it's 45,150. That doesn't do much for us. So I need to change this. Instead of sum of restaurant, I probably want count. So to do that, down under values, click on the little drop down arrow, click value field settings, and then choose count by summarize values by count. And when I do that, it better show up as 300 because I have 300 restaurants. Yes, it worked. So we have 300 restaurants. Okay, so the next thing we might want to do is break it out by quality rating. And I'm going to put that in rows because I want to see how many there are in each one. Right, so there's 66 excellent, 84 good, 150 very good, grand total 300. Notice what happened here was it ordered it by alphabetically, E, G, V. All right, so that's probably not what we want. We probably want it to go from good to very good to excellent. So you could try sorting it, but it's not going to really work because you can only sort by alphabetical for this particular one. So what we can do is we can manually move rows. To do this, you select the cell that you want to move. So I want to move excellent all the way to the bottom. And then move your mouse over, usually to the far right, until the mouse pointer looks like that, which is 4 black arrows pointing out from each other. Then what you do is click and drag it down to the bottom. Now I have good, very good, and excellent in the order that I want. So again, it's a little tricky sometimes to get to that arrow point, but you select the cell, move it over, usually to the far right edge, and it changes into that, and then you can click and drag it down. Okay, so that's good. We have 84, good, very good, 150, excellent, 66. But if we go back to what we looked at for the pivot chart, we wanted it also broken out by price range or meal price. So if I drag meal price into columns, let's see what that does. So notice what it does here. It takes each of the individual meal prices, and we don't have things like $10.50 or $14.32. It's in single dollar increments. So it's putting out every individual one, right? So there are a total of 7 restaurants that have a meal price of $10. 6 are good, 1 is very good. There are 8 that are $11, 4 good, 4 very good. So that's interesting, but it's a bit much information to try to digest by having to scroll. And it looks like we go everything from 10 to 48 except for 39. So there's your price point if you want to have a niche in the market for this particular data set. It looks like have a price point of $39. What I probably want to do is break this into $5 or $10 increments. So if I look back at the pivot chart that we were looking at, I broke it into $10 increments. So let's do that. So the way to do this is to click one of the labels here, right, column labels, and then under pivot table analyze, I can either do group selection, or I can right click and do group. I tend to do the right clicking and doing group. Starting at 10, ending at 48 by $10. So that sounds like a pretty good thing to do. That's kind of what we did in the pivot. That's what the ending thing looked like. So let's do that. So when I do that, I see 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, and grand total. So overall, from this we can see which price range has the highest number of restaurants in it. And we can see it's 118 in the $20 to $29 range. Probably doesn't surprise us too much. Notice that we can also see that no restaurants that are rated as good have $40 to $49 price range. That's probably a thing of, right, if I paid $40 to $45 for an entree, I am probably not going to want to rate it as good because I feel like I wasted my money. So if we're getting the results from surveying people after they go to a restaurant, then I personally would be hesitant to say, oh, it was only good. Right? I paid a bunch of money. It better be at least very good. Notice that also in the $40 to $49 range, we have a lot of excellent. There's 6 that are very good, and then right here as well. What we can also notice is where we have row totals and column totals. And we also notice that there are 2 restaurants that are excellent in the $10 to $19 range. Those are the ones that I want to go find, right? So see if they're really that good. So from here, let's go ahead and try to create a pivot chart. Under Pivot Table Tools, Analyze Pivot Chart, it will lay it over top of what we have, and cluster column is what I want, so I'm going to click OK. That's usually the one that is most useful. Sometimes other ones are good, but this is the one that is most useful the majority of the time. So I bring it down here so we can see it a little bit better. And notice what it did is not only did it give me the meal price over here, right? So blue, orange gives me different colors, and the quality rating down here, good, very good, excellent. So again, it's based on the order that I reordered. I can also filter on different things. So if I say I only want $20 to $29, then it says there's 40 that are good, 64 that are very good, and 14 that are excellent. And notice there's a big funnel right here saying that, hey, you've got that filtered, right? So I can go back to what we were before. Quality rating, same thing. You can change the filter on right here. Let's try to get rid of good and see what happens. Okay, so now it's just very good and excellent. And notice when you go back up to here, the row labels has a little filter on it also, right, for the quality rating. So let's go back and select everything again. Get back to here. Now if we go back to what the slide looked like, which was probably right there, I have percentages over here, and it looks like the highest it goes is like 22% or something. So that what that means is that I did these as grand totals. So to get that same thing over here, so this is raw count, what we can do is under value field settings for the count of restaurant, click on value field settings again, and now we do show value as, and right now it's no calculation. What I want is percent of grand total. Click OK, and now we see that we have percentages up here. All right, so it's saying that the total number of restaurants out of the 300 that have a meal price range of $10 to $19 and are rated as good is 14%. This blue column right here. Right? So some of this also tells me, the other nice thing about the pivot chart on top of the pivot table is I can see kind of the shapes of the different ones for each one. So if we went back to our box plot, right, we saw kind of this way, and we could kind of see shapes based off of how long each whisker is. But now I can kind of see a little bit better of a shape for each one of those, right? So we see majority of stuff for excellent falls in the $30 to $49 range, those two bins. Here it looks like it's the $20 to $39. Here it's the $10 to $29. So that shouldn't surprise us, right? Especially if we think price is some kind of indication of the quality of the restaurant. So it's a very brief introduction to cross tabulations, pivot tables, and pivot charts. The other thing that you can do, if you want, is if you go back over here and if you want to insert a pivot chart without a pivot table, you can kind of do that. What you have to do is you say insert and over here pivot chart under charts, and it selects the data. I'll put it in a new worksheet, and then it then expects you to build the pivot table, right, as you go along. So maybe let's do wait time, right? And then let's do count, and then here let's group wait time in 10-minute increments. And then you could explore that, right? Notice that we got a bunch of single stuff out here, so it may not do much, right? It looks like between 40 and 49, and then all of a sudden we jump with 3 out here. So you probably might want to group those a little bit differently so you don't have all this stuff going on. So again, you can start with a pivot chart, but it expects you to build the pivot table in the background. So that finishes up pivot tables and pivot charts for this particular unit. Again, it's something you should explore in a little more detail on your own.